Okay, let's get this over with. X-Men The Last Stand. It is the third film in the X-Men franchise. It came out in 2006. And also, it is the first X-Men movie not to be helmed by Bryan Singer. Instead, Singer left to go make Superman Returns. Good God, would I rather be watching that? The plot this time around, or should I say plots, is that it takes place after the second one, obviously. And obviously the team, Scott Summers in particular, is still dealing with the loss of Jean Grey, the Famke Janssen character who sacrificed her life at the end of the last movie. In addition, it seems like Jean Grey has come back from the dead. Against all odds, she has come back from the dead, except something might be off about her. Now, in conjunction with that, Magneto is on the loose once again, and not only are the X-Men trying to catch him, but the U.S. government is trying to catch him. The U.S. government has finally sympathized with Charles Xavier's cause, or at least enough to where they would be willing to hunt down Magneto. So, there's that, and also, to top it all off, the island of Alcatraz has been converted into a research facility where study of a mutant named Leech has yielded a serum or has yielded a vaccine that, when injected into a mutant, effectively suppresses the X gene, rendering them quote unquote normal, completely without powers. They call it a cure. So naturally, this is very controversial to the mutant community at large. Some people really want to take it to fit into society and save themselves from any future persecution, but others are outraged. Like, how could they possibly call this a cure? How could they want to? Where do they get off telling us that there's something wrong with us? And this escalates to the point where Magneto uses it to his advantage. He basically says the humans will eventually convert this thing into a weapon, which they eventually do. And says these Homo sapiens will eventually draw first blood. Are you gonna let that happen? And they're like, no! Well, join my new and improved Brotherhood of Mutants, and they're like, yeah, we'll do that. So, as you can see, there's a lot going on in this movie. And that's actually the biggest problem with it, is that despite the fact that this movie clearly wants to be the action-packed conclusion and the dramatically resonant climax to the X-Men trilogy, it just ends up being a mess. And once again, this series falls victim to the age-old curse that befalls movie trilogies, and that the first two are very good, third one not so much. I remember liking parts of it, but overall I couldn't really gravitate towards the finished package. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I don't really know how much I can blame Brett Ratner for this, considering that this movie actually went through a few directors before it eventually landed at Ratner's feet. I can't really blame him for the crowded script. And again, that's the biggest problem with this movie, is that it has all of these great ideas. Actually, no, I'm going to name some more. This isn't really a plot line, but the character of Bolivar Trask is in this movie. And the movie opens with the X-Men facing down a Sentinel, so you're like, oh, wow. The proverbial crap has hit the fan. I mean, they brought in Sentinels now, but no, it's a Danger Room simulation, and Bolivar Trask does nothing in the movie. So they tease you. They tease you with the fact that they brought in Sentinels and they brought in the character of Trask, and they do absolutely nothing with them. It's a Danger Room simulation, and it's a slap in the face, and it's one of many slaps in the face. Also, the character of Juggernaut is in this movie, but much like the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth in the first movie, Juggernaut being the half-brother of Charles Xavier is never really brought up. Now, it would have been yet another plot line that they would have had to juggle in an already chaotic movie. But even so, you kind of expect that kind of thing. They don't even change his name. They still call him Cain Marko. So when I hear that, I don't even think when I see him and Xavier not even making eye contact, not once, I don't even think they share the frame. It's like they have all of these good ideas, but either they don't have the talent or they don't have the time to properly develop all of these potentially interesting plot lines that could all have their own movie. The mutant cure could have its own movie. The relationship between Charles Xavier and Juggernaut could have its own movie. The Phoenix, the whole thing with Jean Grey and the Phoenix, could have its own movie. Trask and the Sentinels could have its own movie. Magneto amassing his forces and gathering his acolytes could have its own movie. But the fact of the matter is, it's just all of these good ideas that may have been good on their own are just thrown into a blender. It's the same problem I have with the recent Amazing Spider-Man 2, is that they have all of these good ideas, but they just mash them together to where it's almost an incoherent mess. It's not quite as incoherent as Amazing Spider-Man 2. I like this better than Amazing Spider-Man 2, but that ain't saying much. There are plenty of good moments in this movie. I'm not saying that this movie is completely devoid of merits. There are things I like about this movie. For instance, what is there regarding the Phoenix is pretty cool. It's good that we see the Phoenix in its full glory. The music by John Powell suits the very divine quality of the Phoenix very nicely. And that actually brings me to one of this movie's biggest strengths, is that the acting remains pretty solid on most fronts, because Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, they all remain great, and especially Famke Janssen. Famke Janssen actually gets some chance to shine as the Phoenix in a way that she hasn't really been able to before. She really gets across this pain of having this otherworldly entity inside of her. She really gets that across pretty well, and she can actually manage to be pretty scary, while at the same time pretty vulnerable and pretty frightened. So, props to Famke Janssen. Also, two members of the X-Men that are in this movie, two new members. We have Beast, played by Kelsey Grammer, and Angel, played by Ben Foster. Much like a lot of the other casting decisions in this movie, these are perfect. All right, these are perfect casting. Kelsey Grammer and Ben Foster. When I see these two guys on screen, I say to myself, yes, those are the characters. Except the problem with Angel is that he is completely superfluous to any of the plots. He's completely useless. He doesn't do anything. They don't do anything with his character. He's one note, and at the end of the day, you're wondering, why were you in this movie, dude? Despite the fact that Angel is pretty nicely realized, they do nothing with his character. He doesn't contribute anything. And again, that goes back to the fundamental problem, is that this movie is just too jam-packed with plot lines, potentially good plot lines, potentially cinematic plot lines, that do not have any time to, or do not have much time to develop, because you have things like the Phoenix arc and the Cure arc, which are the two most prominent ones. But they're constantly fighting for screen time with each other, and like I said, each of them are movie-worthy, but they don't get quite as much development as necessary. And maybe that's because the writers didn't really have the talent to properly showcase these story arcs. Maybe they didn't really feel confident in their ability to do justice to the Phoenix, or the ability to do justice to the mutant cure. So they just decided, well, we'll alternate between them, so that way we don't really have to go as deep into either one of them as we would have if we were just focusing on one of them. Because that's the mindset that you want to aspire to. And also, this movie just slaps you in the face so many times if you liked a lot of the characters in the first two X-Men movies, because Cyclops is killed off screen. Cyclops is barely in the movie. He only fires one optic blast, and like I said, he's killed off screen. He's killed toward the beginning of the movie off screen. And I said, "Wow, way to way to off a character from the beginning." And it's not one of those decisions, and it's not one of those things where it's a pretty bold decision. Like, I'm just going with a recent example here, like when they killed off Moira Queen on Arrow. Moira Queen had been there since the beginning of the show, and having her killed by Slade Wilson near the end of season 2 was a pretty bold move, and it felt appropriately dramatic. I mean, it's not like they killed her off near the beginning of season 1, because that honestly would have been a mistake. You wouldn't have seen this character develop. I mean, if I had not seen the first two movies, I wouldn't know anything about Cyclops before they axed him off. Another slap in the face comes when, at the beginning of the movie, it's revealed that the government has Mystique in custody. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mystique was running free with Magneto at the end of X-Men 2. So what happened? What happened? She was captured off screen. She was captured in between movies. What? You reduced her to being captured off screen. And as soon as it looks like she might get out, she's basically taken out of the movie because she gets shot with a mutant cure. Really? What a waste of a great character. What a waste of someone we've seen since the beginning. Like Cyclops, Mystique, they don't kill her off, but they write her off as if she was nothing. They write her off as if she was an extra. And this actually leads me to something I don't like, which is when she's a human and she pleads with Magneto, "Please don't leave me." She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not one of us anymore." Nothing we have seen up to this point would lead us to believe that he would not be at least a little grateful to Mystique, someone who has, again, been with him from the beginning. Someone who has stuck by him. The one character from his team in the first movie that has stuck by him through all three movies, and he just leaves her there like she was nothing. And again, it's supposed to show a degradation of his character, but in actuality, it actually diminishes interest in his character because it weakens his character. It weakens his character's resolve. It makes his character out to be a thug, just a thug without any sense of morals or gratitude. Oh, and where did Nightcrawler go? Seriously, where did he go? I know Alan Cumming absolutely hated being in the Nightcrawler makeup and prosthetics and whatnot, but you could have at least included an explanation as to why he wasn't here. And you should have, if you were going to have him stay with the X-Men, presumably at the end of the second one, then what was stopping you from bringing him back for this one? Well, apparently they couldn't find him a place in the plot. I can't really say that's surprising, but you took the best new character from the second movie and you completely threw him away. Again, off screen. And it's true. I know I'm probably going to save myself one or two comments by saying this, or one or two corrections, by saying that yes, in the game X-Men the Official Game, it does explain why Nightcrawler is no longer with the X-Men. But think for a second. I only know that because I played the game. I should not have to play a video game to understand the absence of a character. I shouldn't. You know, there was no reason for him not to be here in terms of his character and in terms of the overall narrative. There was no narrative reason for him not to be here, or at least none that was established. I will say this, the action scenes are fine. There are too many of them, but the action scenes are fine. And this is another big problem with this movie. It seems like, and this goes back to the writers not really taking the time to develop these plot lines, like the Phoenix and the Cure and whatnot. It seems like it seems like the story always comes second behind the action. It seems like a lot of the time it's just an excuse to get to the next action sequence. It's not like that all the time, but it certainly feels like it at least some of the time. And also, this actually commits the sin that the first X-Men movie committed, in that Magneto's gang has little to no personality. I mean, they are painted with the broadest stroke of the gothic city punk brush that I have seen in a while. I mean, at least his gang in the first one, I could tell who everyone was. At least they were distinct. You were not going to get Sabretooth confused with Mystique. You were not going to get Mystique confused with Toad, etc., etc. Or theoretically, you could get her confused with Toad if she transformed. Whatever. That doesn't even cover the full extent of the characters who are completely marginalized. Rogue and Iceman and a lot of the other X-Men are completely sidelined. Rogue, who again has been with us from the beginning, is basically just a throwaway character this time around. They have her take the mutant cure, which again is a bold move. And again, they have a good idea here in having Rogue be tempted by the mutant cure, but there is no development. There is little to no screen time devoted to her inner struggle of should I or should I not take the cure, blah 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 blah. It's a blink and you miss it storyline. For a character that has been with us since the first movie, it feels, again, like a slap in the face. And Shadowcat, they throw in Shadowcat, Kitty Pryde, and she's played by Ellen Page. Now, Ellen Page, I always felt, has been kind of hit or miss. In some things, she can be really good, like Inception. In some things, she can be actually pretty bad, like Beyond Two Souls. Here, she's fine. I mean, they don't really give her anything to do, but she's a perfectly serviceable Shadowcat. True, this character has shown up in the other movies via cameo, so I don't really know what that does for the continuity, but Ellen Page as Shadowcat, I can get behind that, or at least as far as they've demonstrated. And apparently they're bringing her back for Days of Future Past, so yes, it's good that they finally got an actor they can stick with for this character. But again, her and Iceman do nothing. Pyro does little to nothing. Pyro is just Magneto's henchman. He's basically discount Mystique, except he's not naked. Thank God. The subtlety of the previous movies is gone. The social commentary is still kind of there, but it's not as subtle. It's more like beating you over the head with this. I mean, with the mutant rallies and the we don't need a cure. We don't need a cure. The action scenes are good, but there are too many of them, and they seem pretty overblown at points. I really liked it when these movies took their time with these characters, took their time with these plot lines, instead of just throwing everything in here at the same time. It just ends up a mess. Again, I liked parts of this movie, namely the acting and the way they handled a lot of the scenes regarding the Phoenix and the Cure. But there are so many characters who are robbed of any dramatic material to work with. There are so many plots and potential plots that are completely disregarded or not given nearly enough time to develop. And again, instead of feeling like this big climactic conclusion, it just feels like a cluster. It feels like, okay, well, in terms of emotional impact, we're not going as far as the previous two movies, but in terms of mindless action, then we're here to satisfy. So many storylines wasted. What a complete waste of potentially interesting material with the Phoenix and the Sentinels and the Cure, and so many characters are either absent or not given as much time to shine as they deserve. Again, the acting is good. I can't really say anything bad about the acting. I can't really think of a bad performance aside from Magneto's followers, who again have little to no personality. The effects are good. The effects are they're what you would expect for $210 million or however much this cost. But again, if there's no coherent story, if there's not suitable character development to back that up, then you have the fundamental problem of why does this all matter? Why do these action spectacles matter if they don't have some kind of emotional and narrative anchor? This movie tries, but it ultimately tries too hard in that it throws all of these things at you at once and hopes that you will be able to gravitate towards all of them. When really, any number of these potential plot lines could have sufficed for one movie. Like I said, there are good scenes, there are good parts of this movie. I mean, it's not a total loss, but in no way does it compare to the first two. No way. Some scenes come close, like the death of Charles Xavier. That comes close, even though, again, it's a slap in the face that they kill him off halfway through the movie. But that's handled pretty well. And the Phoenix stuff, what Phoenix stuff is there, particularly with Famke Janssen's acting, is good. The mutant cure had potential. All of these things had potential, but it just goes unfulfilled. And that's really the word that I can use to describe this movie, is completely, or not completely, but mostly unfulfilling. And that really saddens me. Yeah, that's all I got. Not terrible, but nothing I'm too eager to see again.